Niko. Welcome to Inside the Pulse.
Thanks, Ralph. It's great to be here, man.
Niko, you transitioned from the sales and marketing director of Display Group and now currently hold the role as the director of business development. Tell me how that role evolved for you.
Yeah, it was a wild ride. In a lot of ways they were similar because, selling is really a part of both roles. In my role as the sales and marketing director, it was really about selling to the team, the team that I was directing, getting them to buy into our goals, what we're trying to do, both short-term and long-term. At times it was about selling to talent that I was trying to recruit to Display Group.
What does that team look like? Is it a team, kind of paint the picture a little bit? Because I did visit Display Group and I was blown away by what I saw because you guys acquire a warehouse and you have multiple floors. And I think that a lot of people don't even realize how many hands are involved. So what does that team look like? What is that team for you?
For me, directing the sales team specifically was directing the team that's at the forefront, having those initial conversations with our prospects and clients. And it was a pretty diverse group. We had some that had been there since the beginning, over 30 years ago, that have worked on so many of our, key events over the years. We had some young talent that was just passionate about the event industry. And we had people coming from different parts of the event industry. So we had those with more of a background in graphics and print production and display fabrication. We had those that were coming from an event planning background. So it was a pretty diverse group of men and women of various ages, but all were talented and brought their sort of unique skills to the table. So, when you're in the role of a sales director, it's what I learned real quickly was how important it was to recruit good talent.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do that?
Spent a lot of time on LinkedIn.
And what are you searching for?
Looking for people that, have experience is big, but that are creative, have a passion for design.
How do you identify that though? Is it you see the graphic visuals that they have on their portfolio, or do you see how they talk about certain topics, or is it all of the above?
Yeah, I think portfolio is a big thing. I would get a lot of resumes that would come across my desk, and I really would look at just how they presented their portfolio or their resume in itself. It was a part of, how they paid attention to the creative details.
The presentation.
Yeah, exactly. And so I love cover letters too. So I'd always look for a cover letter, something that was well-crafted. And
to you, what is well-crafted?
Unique, specific, it wasn't generic. It wasn't short. Maybe a little longer because someone really gave some thought to it and it was specific. And I could tell that they had a passion for what they were doing, and that came through in the copy that they wrote. So I was always big on cover letters, someone explaining why they want this opportunity, why they feel like they're a good fit specifically for Display Group. That's how I was identifying, how they presented themselves, their portfolio of past events and their past work, as well as, just how they carried themselves. Sales is all about building trust, people trusting that you're authentic, that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and also that you have the experience you say you have. They can actually trust that you know what you're talking about.
It comes out. It just, you can sense when somebody has what they say they have, the way they talk, the way they carry themselves, the way they express things, the way that people say to me all the time, when I talk, I'm looking everywhere because it's just so natural for me, and I feel like as somebody in leadership, you can start to pick that up. I say all the time that when you own a business or when you're in a leadership role, you essentially have to become a talent scout in so many different forms, your eyes.
That was new to me. I didn't expect that going into the role, how important it was to always be scouting, always be hiring. always be interviewing. I would have conversations and tell people, I'm not necessarily hiring right now, but like I do want to talk, and let's keep talking.
And I want to touch on that because I think that for some people, they see that as a negative because they may think, well, if I'm not going to get a position, why would I go talk to someone? And I think it's so important to be mindful of relationships are everything. When you meet someone, if they don't have a role for you, they have a network. They have a ton of people in their network that might be looking for somebody that you just talked to, and then you can refer them to them. So it's like you never should be shut off to the possibility of what can come from a conversation,
Exactly. And the right people, that was always an indicator right there. If I told somebody I'm not hiring right now, but I do want to talk, their willingness to accept that conversation was always an indicator for me of the type of person they were. And so, yeah, that was my thing, was just always be having conversations. And it did, you talked about just kind of people that have it, you immediately trust them. They're genuine. That could burn you as well, because what I was finding I was doing is I wasn't digging deep enough in my interview process. I was trusting my gut, like, oh, I like you. I trust you. That must translate to this being a success. And I had to learn along the way that, because I got burned a couple times, where, and this happens no matter what role you're in interviewing, you're not going to bat 1,000, but I learned that I needed to dig a little deeper, and I needed to actually work on the skill of interviewing people. I got feedback actually from some people on my team who, I actually had them interview some candidates, and they asked better questions than I was asking. So I started to pay attention, like, okay, I need to dig a little deeper, because there's more than just personality. That's a big piece of it, but you got to dig deeper.
I think the interview process is a whole skill set in itself. I think even for me, like, as I started to interview different types of people on this podcast, like, I realized where my weaknesses were, where my strengths were, where opportunity, was. And that's still, I think, for anybody that probably even 5 years into their podcast are constantly evolving and making changes, because with time, things present itself, new opportunities, new, ways of approaching something can present itself. And I think that it's a constant evolution.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, it's interesting because there's two types of interviews. There the people that are really eager to work for you, and then there's the ones that you're eager to land. And that was the thrill that I really enjoyed, is when you find someone perhaps really talented, experienced, is going to elevate your team. And, I got to put my sales hat on and really trying to pitch them on Display Group and our vision, and me, as the person they'd be reporting to, and the culture that I'm trying to build. I enjoyed that process. And that, at being in sales previously, I got to experience the thrill of closing a deal. And then when I shifted into a director role, it was the thrill of landing someone really talented that was going to elevate our team and make us better.
What did you see as the major differences between those two roles?
It was usually experience, and I think both talent pools are necessary. You need sort of young and up and coming talent. And that's a little harder to identify because they may not have a long resume. But you need people on your team that are willing to roll up their sleeves, do some of the less glorious work and prove their value. So you need those key players on your team. But then, usually the ones you were trying to really recruit just had more experience. That comes with time in the industry. They've seen it all, and you really can plug them right in. And they can immediately make an impact. It's like a sports team, I mean, you need to draft young talent.
You need to be able to adapt quickly. And I think that that's why anyone that is evolving in their self, journey, I think that it's so important to always be mindful of the fact that you, like how you just just described. You are like a talent, the same way that an athlete is on a sports team. You're a talent that has to be able to mesh into wherever you go. It's not a matter of I'm here and this is, this is it. No, it's if you allow your mind to lock into the mentality, you're never going to evolve. You're never going to reach beyond your potential, because you're just stuck in that one place. But I think that for anybody that wants to have a career that, transitions into, from manager to director to VP, like you have to constantly be allowing yourself to work that muscle.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So for anyone that doesn't know what Display Group is, how would you describe it to somebody?
Yeah, we're a live event production company that came from, our early history was in scenic environments for various social events and corporate events in Metro Detroit. So when we started back in 1991, it was building themed environments and atmospheres. And we accumulated a pretty large warehouse of fun props and decor that could be used to theme these environments for social parties and corporate events. And so that's how we got started back in 1991. But really over the last 10 years, we've experienced a more rapid growth as we've elevated from simply scenic decor to full live event production with heavy focus on audio visual production, as well as experiential marketing activations.
It is huge, Niko. I think the live experience is something that I think that a lot of brands, if not already, are going to start actively moving into, because, as we're moving into this kind of new wave of like AI and digital, and like everybody's, has spent time at home for a long period of time, people still want to feel a connection, and I think that brands that actively produce live experiences are going to win so much, now and in the future. And I mean, your guys' footprint, you can see it pretty much all over Detroit. You guys, I see your trucks all the time at the train station.
Yeah.
I saw that you guys recently did worked with Femology inside of New Lab.
Yeah.
So I think for anybody that has a brand or is in a role of leadership that is responsible for brand development, I think actively thinking about what your live experience to your audience looks like is so important.
Absolutely. I think events needs to be one of your marketing channels as you're developing your marketing plan, for sure.
100%. So we talked a little bit off camera, and I think storytelling, like when you're storytelling online, it's one thing, but when you're storytelling in person and you develop a partnership with someone like Display Group, what does that relationship typically look like?
It's all about discovery. We put a lot of emphasis on the discovery phase. We need to fully understand the story you're trying to tell and what is your objective. After you tell the story, what are you...
The call to action.
Yeah, what's the call to action? And we want to really understand that before we start our design process. But once we understand the feelings and emotions that you're trying to evoke in your audience, we allow that to filter through every phase of the design process. We literally start all of our designs with a mood board, and it's quite important that we get the mood right. And so we spend a lot of time focusing on the mood that we're trying to design and the feelings we're trying to generate in our audience. So that's where it starts.
Do clients come with you with like concepts or like ideas or like, this is our color palette? Like, how does that conversation typically begin?
Yeah, they come to us at various phases of their process. Sometimes we're lucky enough and privileged enough to start at the beginning with them when they just have an idea.
That's the best.
And it is the best. And I say it's an honor and a privilege because they're really trusting you with building their message and crafting their experience. So we're thrilled if we can start, with you at that phase, but We also know a lot of our clients come to us having already gone through that process, and they've already developed their event to a point where now it's more production than it is creative. But our approach is to always just be ready to take the handoff wherever you're at, to meet you wherever you're at in your process and get it across the finish line. It's not about ego or having full control over the process. We don't need that. We'll take it wherever you need us to take it and get it across the finish line for you.
And I think it's because, like, for most people, I mean, speaking for myself, I think in my mind, I have an idea of what I would like my live experience to look like, but it's like the knowledge and the know-how. I think when you come to the drawing board with a production team that understands how to execute, and I say this all the time, it's like when you work with partners that are experts in their field, it literally makes it like as if you can imagine or rub a genie bottle and have the most wild idea out there, and then working with somebody that knows how to execute it. That's something that I think a lot of people don't give enough weight to because they overthink the how to do it. And it's like, no. You just have to understand what it is that you want to see come to fruition, and then trust that somebody that knows how to execute it is going to handle that for you.
Yeah, the results are usually better the earlier we can get involved. Or exactly what you just said. We can help direct early decisions that we know are going to make production easier and more effective than if you sort of fall in love with a concept or an idea that may be impossible to produce.
Or super expensive.
Yeah. So I like to say too, to your point about how it's like, magic sometimes when you're working with the right people. We produce experiences, but I always like to tell our team, we want your experience of working with us to be enjoyable as well. So from beginning to end, we want it to feel like an enjoyable experience. So we really want to focus on how we interact with our clients, how easy it is to work with us. And we want it to feel like magic. Like you said, like they just come with their idea or vision, whatever spark they have, and trust we can produce.
When you make it look effortless, you know you're doing it right.
That's right.
So one of the displays that I'm sure most people in Detroit would recognize that you guys produced was when the NFL draft was coming to Detroit, and it was just right in the center of downtown Detroit, and people come up to it, take pictures and all of it. How do you approach those type of interactive experiences? Because I think the goal was that the client NFL, or was it?
So we didn't produce the NFL draft itself, the main draft program. The NFL has their production partners. They came into town. So the actual draft itself was produced by the NFL and their agencies. Where Display Group was able to assist was really everything outside of the main stage. So different brand activations, viewing parties, as well as probably the most prominent piece we did was projecting on the buildings along Woodward across from the New Hudson's building. We projected video content on the buildings. It was actually mapped as well. And so that was probably our largest, single contribution to the NFL draft.
When coming up with catching attention, I think that's the biggest thing that when working with a partner like Display Group, you guys had, when I went into your warehouse, it was just attention grabbing everywhere. There was a giant display boot. There was the giant Spirit of Detroit. There's so many moments of, wow, I want to get closer to that. I want to take a picture of that. I want to take a picture with that. That's not by accident. That's a strategic approach to what you're trying to achieve in that relationship with that client. So I would assume that you guys have a team that comes together and talks about, like, this is what the objective is. This is what the client's wanting to achieve. What are some ways that we can make this happen?
Absolutely. We do have several creative individuals on our design team, but I'll back up and say, really, one thing I love about Display Group is really almost everyone in the organization is a creative individual who's passionate about art and design. It's not uncommon. You walk around and find someone who's perhaps in a band and they're playing a gig on the weekend, or they're an artist and then they're showing their art at a local gallery, or working on some sort of, prototype for a new product or whatever it may be. There's a lot of creative individuals that are working in our organization, whether you're, officially on our design team or not. And so that's one thing I really appreciate. But we do have a design team. We have a creative director and a design manager who manages a pretty diverse team because Display Group's offering is so wide. So we have those that specialize in interior design, graphic design. We have lighting designers, sound engineers, and the real beauty of it is when all those creative individuals are in the room together. And the objective is, okay, we have our client who has this emotion or this feeling they're trying to generate. This is the mood. We take into account the venue, the geographic location. I mean, a lot of our events in Detroit, but we're designing events in Phoenix and San Diego. So what is the vibe of those destinations? How can you bring that all together? What is the conference or event about?
Are you guys also considering like the demographic in that area, like, all the different elements and,
absolutely, who the attendees are, we get sort of the demographic of the audience, and definitely taking that into consideration. What do they want to see? What sort of event do they want to experience? Is it a bunch of young people that want to party?
How do you know what it is that they want to see? Like, where do you collect that data from?
Usually comes from our clients. They're usually, our clients know their attendees best. And so we'll lean on them to describe, the demographic of their attendees. Sometimes it's very diverse and you have to build more of a generic experience, but some of our conferences and events, have a very specific audience. So is it going to be loud, bright?
So Display Group has their hands on everything from stage, sound, lighting, outside activations as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the activations because even for a lot of people, they don't even the term activations. How do you define activations?
I define an activation as some sort of experience that, a brand is taking over a space and creating some sort of experience to interact and engage with their audience. So it can be, we experience small versions of activations when we go to the grocery store and there's a distributor of a liquor who's giving you a tasting. I mean, that's a small little brand activation. They may have a little tablecloth and they have their product there and they're talking with their target audience, engaging with them and letting them try out their products. So it could be something as simple as that we're all used to experiencing.
Even when they set up those displays during that Super Bowl, like the entryway, and they have like the Coke can boxes set up to look like a football field, and people can go up to it and take pictures and stuff. I think that's something that, because even too, like when you go to the Tigers, like a Tigers game, and you're walking around, what is it, the mezzanine, that you see all of these different activations. It's purposeful. It's people understand, and the thing is, you're the people, the brands are the people understand that fans are coming with cameras, their phone. Fans are coming or with their friends, that they also want to tap into that culture capital and say, look where I am, look what I'm doing. So it really is more than just a look at us. It's a look at what we're creating here, not for us, but for you to get to enjoy. And it's almost like it's not about the word strategy. It's not about seeing it from a negative lens. It literally is, everything is with purpose. We want people to come back. We want people to bring their friends and family. We want people to grow up with the brand. So it's all purposeful.
Exactly. Yeah, you're creating moments where you can connect with your audience. I mean, that's really what these brand engagements are all about. So they can be such a wild range of events, but the objective's all the same, to make a meaningful, real life connection with your target audience.
Mm-hmm.
Get them to feel something. Is it excitement? Is it empathy for a cause? You want them to hear your story. You want them to connect with it.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, take that back to their networks. And once you strike like kind of an emotional connection, that's when, now you have these brand ambassadors out there working for you for free to promote your brand.
It's literally live art. I was talking to someone and there was an artist that they did a live activation, but in the industry, it's called art. Mm-hmm. So they were spreading the message about global warming, and they chopped up pulled a glacier, the logistics of going out and getting a glacier, giant piece of ice, breaking it up in the middle of the town square. They chop it up and put it into like 8 pieces in a circle, and people are walking up to it, taking pictures, and in real time seeing the ice melt in front of their face. So it's this activation, but you're also understanding it's melting, So it's like a real live, in moment understanding of why this activation was created.
Exactly. Yeah. That's awesome.
You mentioned on empathy, and I think that for you guys, you work with so many different types of brands. How do you, when you're working with those and developing those relationships, share a little bit of insight about the dynamic of that relationship? Because I think for me, I know that every industry is so different. Every person in that, brand is so different. So I think that even the initial concept of helping people feel comfortable with the idea that your ideas are safe with us because we are your partner in this. How is the relationships, or that you notice, how have they changed since you transitioned from your role from director of sales and marketing to now the director of business development?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because it's in both roles, it's about connecting with people and building trust. It's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. When I was directing the sales team, it was about building trust with them, that I cared about them, that I cared about their success. And like you said, their ideas, their thoughts and feelings were safe with me. I'll tell a story about, I had someone that I worked with that was sort of a mentor, and we'd have regular one-to-ones, and we'd spend half the one-to-one just talking about my life. He would always be like, "What's going on with you?" And I would tell him, "Hey, this is what's going on." And then he'd ask a question about that. Mm-hmm. And we'd end up spending half the time just talking about my life. Mm-hmm. And at first I'm like, well, man, we're really just wasting our one-to-one. And then it was kind of like this aha moment. Like, no, this is the one-to-one. He's using half the time to just say, I care about you and I'm interested in you. And really that was such an important thing for me to realize with my team, is just to form a friendship and a bond with them, and for them to truly know that I care about them. And, there may be people that are like, want to draw a hard line between business and personal. I don't really believe that exists. It's like, we're all just this,
your family.
It all kind of just melts together, and your personal life affects your business life, and people's mental space and how they're feeling, it affects their work. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe, that your boss needs to be your therapist or your parent, but they do need to be someone that you trust and that cares about you. So as I was directing the team, it was all about building trust. And the same is true now as I'm kind of getting back into working with our clients and at the forefront of new business opportunities. It's about building trust with my clients. And the key to that is you got to throw ego out the door. In both scenarios, when your ego is affecting the decisions you make and the things you say.
What do you mean by that? Like, throw out ego? Because for someone listening, they're like, what is that? What does that mean? Like, how do I, Well,
I think when your ego is controlling your decisions, your conversations, the way you carry yourself, I think it hurts trust. I think it tears down trust, because the person on the other side is like, it's all about them.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about them. It's got to be their way.
How can people practice like throwing out their ego?
I think you're spot on when you say it's a practice. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
part of daily life, and I think it's about self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It takes time you really got to sit and think about, how am I behaving?
Mm-hmm.
And when you do behave a certain way, because
Mm-hmm.
even, all of us are trying to throw our ego out, but it rears its ugly head at times. Do you have the self-awareness to stop and be like, what did I just do?
Mm-hmm.
What really caused me to behave that way? And you identify as my ego got the best of me.
Yeah.
There.
Epiphany moment for me was when I realized that when I started to look at the things that I say to people as if I'm saying it to myself, it allows me to interpret what I'm saying and how I'm saying it and how it could be received to some people, because it really does flip that switch for you. It makes you more cognizant of not just what you're saying, but how it may be received to people.
You got to reach that level of self, reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you're thinking about not what you meant. I think a lot of people think, well, what I meant was this. So then they try to justify what they said or did. It really doesn't matter what you meant.
Mm-hmm.
What did the other person think you meant? How did they take it? That's all that matters. And you're stopping and thinking about that. And I think all of us need to think that way, before you send an email.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a whole other topic I get into, but
get into it, please.
Do you send, all of us get these moments where we want to send the angry email with emotional language in it, where we say things like every time or everyone.
It's so huge, Niko.
Yeah.
Recently what I started doing, and I recommend other people do this, is if you feel angry or if you feel frustrated with somebody, a client or a team member or whatever, go into ChatGPT, say what you want to say, and then say, but please make it very kind, sweet, professional, because sometimes you need to read what you said and then give yourself that moment to be like, whoa, if I got that, I would be, feeling some type of way about that. But now you're at least able to get your thought and your, what you want to say across, but in a healthy way,
It's so important. And I think another hack to that, ChatGPT is good. I like to go back after I do that and then re-edit it to make sure it sounds like me. And I think that's a good strategy. But also, here's another one: schedule send. So, I will schedule send an email. For one, if you have a rather, an email that could be emotional, don't send it at night. It doesn't look good that you're sending this email, after hours. Like, what sort of headspace are you in at that time? But also, what are you doing to the other person? And here's, again, we're thinking about how it's received by the other person. So, so there's this idea of like, well, they don't have to check their email, but we know the reality is that people do. And let's say they're winding down for the evening, they're with their kids or their family, and now they see this long email come up. What did you just do to that person? You may have ruined their night. You may have caused a sleepless night for them.
Or they woke up to this email and now they started their day with like, what? And you don't want that feeling like as your brand, like your personal brand. You don't want people to feel a negative feeling when they associate with you. Like, this person is just not my type of energy, because everything is energy. Everything is, frequency. Everything is feeling. Everything, we're all the same,
right?
And we all think different. We all feel different, and that's the way it's designed to be. But I think that, to your point, being mindful of the other person is being mindful for yourself.
Exactly. That's why a lot of times, I'll leave an email in draft for one thing. That's first step. Second step is I'll schedule send. And this actually just happened to me recently. I schedule sent an email at, let's say, 8:00 at night for the next morning. And the issue is still on my mind in the middle of the night. I woke up still thinking about it, went downstairs, got to that draft. It hadn't sent yet, and I was able to reread it. Now I'm in a little different headspace. I've rested for a few hours. It's the middle of the night. And I went through and edited it for emotional language, took out some of the things that, felt a little angry or frustrated, just took those out and made it clear and direct, because we don't want to water things down and want to address issues head on, but remove the things that make it personal, stick to the actual issues, take out emotional language, take out the always and the really and whatever these words are that just sound emotional, just strip them out, stick to the facts. But yeah, it's so really this whole concept of how you're perceived and how you come across the other person builds trust. And if they think that you're in it for yourself, you don't really care about them, it just erodes trust, and it's really hard to have success. So, when I was directing people, it was about building trust with them, that I cared about them, and then shifting to client work. You mentioned empathy. I think it's so important. On the flip side, we talked about being, caring about how you're perceived. On the flip side, when you receive a message or an interaction from a client, stopping and thinking about why did they behave the way they did? Why did this message come across the way it did? Maybe it came across really harsh. But a lot of times I stop and think that probably it's coming across harsh because someone is speaking harsh to them. Their manager, their superior is coming down on them, and then they feel the need to come down on someone else. So I always stop and think, before I take this personal,
it's huge. Can
I be sympathetic to this person is probably on the receiving end of some really toxic communication, and they're just reciprocating it to me. And so I allow, and that's where you got to take ego out of it. Because if ego is involved, now you're going to respond in kind because your ego's been hurt. You took it personal. Strip that down, take your ego out of it, absorb, try to find out what do they really need. And most of the time they're afraid that if they don't get out of you what they need, they're going to have to answer to somebody, and it's going to get ugly. So a lot of times it's fear. And I would always tell the sales team, they're just afraid that this is going to fail. So all you need to do is assure them that you have it under control, that you understand what their problem is, and that you have a solution. And don't allow your ego to get you to respond in a way that's negative. So
puts more fuel on the fire too. And I think it's life. I think when you think about generational cycles, if you don't break the cycle, it's going to continue to happen. And I think that applies to what you just said. If you're that person that is approaching or responding with empathy and respect, you're flipping the switch for that person that is so accustomed to the way that it's not supposed to be, because if you're leading, you cannot lead with anger. You cannot lead with fear. You cannot lead with hate. You have to lead with love. You have to lead with empathy. You have to lead with forgiveness. You have to lead with understanding. And I think that plays a huge role in not just the effectiveness of the project, but the effectiveness of retention, the effectiveness of people wanting to be, because reputation is huge. Reputation gets out. People go talk to their friends and their family. I have the best boss in the world. I have to work for the best company in the world. That spreads. Yep. And then reputation gets out. And then people are like, I want to work for the best, because if you're not that person for that person at another company, you become an option that seems way more appealing to them than the other one.
Exactly. So that's the key to the role. If anybody's in a role of developing new business, it's developing new relationships and building a really, really strong foundation for the future. So I think in a lot of roles, there's that role, business development, is kind of all over the place. And in a lot of roles, it's just opening doors, starting conversations. But for me, it's a multi-year process. I'm not interested in just one project. It's how can we build a really healthy working relationship built on trust, mutual respect, understanding, and then setting a precedent and an example for your team. Because if you are in new business, you eventually have to let go of these relationships and these opportunities and allow your your company to nurture that relationship further. So you're setting an example of how you want this client to be treated. You're setting a precedent, and you're slowly transitioning it over to your organization. That's how I view it in my role and what I'm trying to do over the next, several years with my role.
In your role, how do you approach, because I think a lot of people in leadership, a lot of business owners, brand owners, artists, entrepreneurs, the topic of relationships and new clients is always on the forefront of most people's mind, because you need money coming in to sustain the business, And I think that for a lot of people, the thought bounces around, so many different thoughts bounce around in their mind of like, I'm not ready to reach out, or this person's better than me, or what if they accept me and then I can't deliver? Like, all these thoughts start bouncing around in their head. How do you kind of mute all those doubts and just approach business development?
So I think it all gets back to honesty and being honest with a prospect from the very start, because that takes all the fear out of it. You don't have to worry about being an imposter or getting exposed. Do you have something of value? That's the first thing. If you do, if you have something that's going to add value to your client, then you have a seat at the table. You should be there because you have something that can help them. Focus on that. Now, if you don't have anything that is valuable, I think that's the first question you'd ask. Can I bring value to this person? If the answer is you're not sure or not really, then you really have no business trying to open a conversation, because you're going to find yourself almost trying to fake it.
That can go into two different lanes, because I think that when you're right out of college and you want to start an agency, you don't have enough experience. So of course, you're not going to have that confidence to go and, be able to lead a conversation, because you don't have that experience, But then on the other side of it, I think that for some people that feel, I know I have value, I know I'm talented, I know I'm gifted, but how do I communicate that value?
Yeah, I think you really have to take some time. I recommend getting it on paper, go someplace quiet and really write down, what value you can bring to your client, just, and keep working on it, editing it, distilling it down until you got this really concrete, firm pitch that you can then start taking to your prospects. And it's nerve-wracking, again, I go back to ego. You have to throw that away, because it's embarrassing to get rejected. It's so embarrassing.
It's one of those things where a lot of people would be surprised that it doesn't matter how well known you are or how many years your business has been in business. Most people still get no's than they get yeses.
Yeah.
I just, was talking to someone, and part of their strategy was partnerships with influential people. And he had mentioned, I get 90% no's, and it's a well-known brand, so it's like, if they're getting no's and they're comfortable doing it daily, you have to strip the ego away. And it's not, this is the template email. Going back to what you said earlier, being thoughtful and value, bringing value to the, potential relationship that you're trying to develop. What does that relationship look like? Like, do you even really want that relationship? Because if you do, it's like the same way that you approach dating. You don't just go in and just get what you want. You're developing a partnership. They have needs, you have needs, you're learning about each other, and that evolution is happening with time. So it's like, in the beginning, if they don't respond, and I think the topic of email outreach is such an important one that I think we all need to be having more, because I feel like people sometimes see email outreach as it's like, instead of ringing the doorbell, you just walk into someone's home. But it's, if you approach it with value, it's like, imagine if you walked to someone's house, went to their front door and brought a charcuterie board and just said, I'm going to put this right here for you, and then I'm going to head out. If it's packaged and everything, it looks safe. Of course, 9 times out of 10, they look at it and they're like, that looks good. I'm going to let that into my house. So I think it's purposeful, strategic, how you approach it, how you deliver the value, in what ways, being okay with people saying no, or sometimes being negative. They might be getting that at home. So you have to be empathetic towards it.
Yeah.
And I think that the same way with, the more you strengthen a muscle, the stronger it gets. The more that you do it and you start to explore different ways of doing it, like explore different types of industries, explore different types of people. You have to get creative with it, because if your ideas are something that you find as valuable, then the way that you communicate it has to be just as creative.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're so right. And it's hard work, so I think anyone who's getting started or is trying to build a business or build a network, whatever it may be, it's just a ton of hard work. You're not just going to all overnight have a network or overnight have good clients. Are you willing to literally walk in? I mean, before COVID, I know it's changed a lot, but before COVID, you still walk in and get turned away by a receptionist, and my question to someone young is like, have you done it? Are you willing to do it? Because that would tell me a lot about your character. Have you walked into a big building and tried to get past the gatekeeper? It's embarrassing because you're walking up and they know you're there to sell something and you feel so like foolish. But I think it's an exercise to go through it. And, I've done it. I've done it. And like you said, 90% of the time, you're escorted politely out of the building, but there's that 10% where you somehow get in and you get in front of the right people and you're having conversations.
And it's like how I mentioned earlier, allowing yourself to put yourself in their shoes and think about, if this was happening to you, how would you feel? Like if somebody walked into my business and said, you should do this, you should, first of all, it's my time. I'm not, of course I want to talk to you, but I may have a meeting. It might be my break for the first, 30 minutes in the day. Like, it's not about, that's why I always think that it's, there's this book called Jab, 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 Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk. And I think it really is like, give, now today in 2025, it's not give, right, and then ask. I think it's give, and then ask, because I think a lot of times people, they ask way too early.
So true.
And if you haven't, even in giving is not just like, here's a free PDF. It could literally just be like, you can send them a book. You can invite them to be on your podcast. You can invite them to an event. Like if you're having an event, send them a free ticket. Like, there's so many different ways to give. You just have to be creative with the way that you do it.
Wait, is that the reason you asked me on the podcast? You're going to be saying something? No, I totally agree with you. One of the thoughts when you first asked this question that had come in my mind was slow down. And you're so right about like people that ask too early. It's like, slow down. I had a call with someone who kind of invented a new product and they're trying to get traction. And the meeting was set up by a colleague of mine. So I'm sitting there and I was so embarrassed for this person on the other side because they just had no clue what it takes. They just immediately started, just telling me about their product and their design. They had no idea like who I am, what I do, who my clients are, what my pain points are. And they're just talking. And I was like, you guys have no idea how quickly I want to get off this call. So you got to just slow down, build a relationship, get to know people, ask questions. I love this approach of like, I'm not even sure if this is a right fit yet.
Because it's both ways.
Yeah.
And that's and to your point, when I bring people on this podcast, it's people that I feel like I would just want to have a good conversation with. And it's like, because even to kind of give a little bit of a back story to anyone watching, we met through another project.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't us reaching out to you saying, hey, we want to sell you this service. It was, hey, we would like to partner with you on a piece of content. We think what you're doing is awesome. It's related to a client that we're working with. And we think it'd be, a cool partnership and some exposure for you guys. And we can collaborate on it. And then that opened up the relationship to 2 years, I think, 2 years now.
At least, yeah.
Now we're on a podcast together. And not once did I ask for anything, and I think it's because at the same time, I want people to hear this, that in my mind, I'm also thinking like, is this like, by now I know it's somebody that I would like in my network, just at the very least, somebody in my network. But then it's like, as conversations develop, yeah, I've gotten clients out of on the podcast. I've gotten people that reached out that learned about our services through the podcast. So it's like, it's not about doing something with the intent of what is it going to do for me. It's, what could this turn into? Like, could it turn into a relationship? Could it turn into a friendship? Could it turn into a potential partnership in the future? Could it turn into, I refer somebody to Niko or Niko refers somebody to me, but there's no expectation. It's just like, and that's the part that I think that a lot of people have a hard time hearing, is that, well, then why are you doing all this work? Well, let me explain a little bit. It's because relationships are the basis of every single, I say this all the time, Niko. I'm like, business is just conversations that lead to negotiations or decision making. That's it. So when we follow somebody online, and it's somebody that we enjoy, whether it's an artist, a musical artist, or whether it's an influencer, or whether it's somebody that is an expert in their lane, they're having conversations with us in real time. We don't talk back to them, but they're talking to us through their art or through their craft. And then eventually, when an opportunity presents itself, whether they're in town and you can buy a ticket to their show, or they come and speak and you're like, I follow this guy all the time, I want to go see, like, I'm going to pay $70 for a ticket to go see him talk in person. Then that happens, So I think that, and for a lot of people, it happened recently with me. I've been following somebody for over 10 years. And then for the first time, I bought one of their books, Right. And I didn't just buy one, I bought a bunch, because I wanted to, because of the emotional impact that this person had on me, I wanted to share that with people that mattered to me,
Exactly. And what you said is just emphasizes that relationships should be treated like the most precious possession that you have. And you take care of it, you nourish it, and you are alert to risks that may negatively impact the relationship. So if you have a business relationship, really any relationship in life, you are protective of what might damage it. And so that is something that really leads every interaction that I have with my clients, and every decision and conversation. I'm thinking about, is this going to potentially harm the relationship? And I think about it in terms of like, I don't want us to commit to something that we can't do and we can't do well, because
sustain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because if we fail, my client fails, they look bad, it could have a negative impact on them, and then the relationship is destroyed. And you could destroy a really good relationship over some quick hit or something immediate, to make a buck.
Mm-hmm.
And, earlier in my career, I'd get caught up in that. Client would need something. And as when we're in, as entrepreneurs or salespeople, whatever it may be, you're naturally a people pleaser. You want to make people happy. You want to be there for them and deliver for them. And they ask you to do something, and you're like, yes, absolutely, can do.
I think it's a common mistake with entrepreneurs or in leadership. Sometimes we overpromise and under-deliver in the beginning, because we're figuring ourselves out. We're figuring out the dynamic of a healthy relationship with a client or a partner.
Yeah. And if you commit to something you can't deliver on, it could ruin the relationship. And it's so now my approach is I don't say no, but I went back to the beginning of what I said was it's about honesty. You know what you can do really well, have that set, say, this is what I do well. This is what I'm built for. I like to use that expression at DG. What are we built for? This is what we are built for. So we will do great at this for you.
What is DG built for?
Producing a live event, and because we're called Display Group and because of our wide capabilities, we get asked to be pulled into a wide variety of projects, that are outside live
How
events.
often are you saying no to events?
I don't think we're not often saying
or
no
not to events, but
yeah.
like the ask.
Probably not as often as we should. I mean, no one wants to say no. You don't want to say no. You don't know when, and going back to relationships, I wanted to say this too. When you're building a relationship, every relationship is valuable. So nurture it and treat it well, because you never know where that relationship's going to go.
Don't burn bridges.
Don't burn bridges. I remember reaching out to someone and they said, no, I'm not in the business anymore. I don't want to meet. And I was like, well, I just want to have coffee. And they're like, no. But a few years later, that person was reaching out to me, soliciting my business. It's kind of funny how that works out. So, remember, it's all about the big picture, and don't be short-sighted with any relationship. So nurture it. But going back to honesty, I like to be honest with my clients. This is what we do good. You asked me another question. You asked how often we say no. We don't want to say no, but what we've been doing is.
But I think that ties into the honesty, because it's like you almost want to find out. Like, could we do this?
Yeah. Because so when an opportunity, is maybe, just to be transparent, maybe too small for us. It never sounds good to say, sorry, you're too small. What I like to say, and I mean it, and I want to be genuine in this, is I want your event to succeed. I want it to go great. And unfortunately, we're not going to have the resources to dedicate to make it what it needs to be for you. So we're saying no for you. And that's true, because we've taken on events that are too small, and then they are neglected. They're resented.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because I think it's such an important topic and conversation, that when people get to a certain point in their career, or a brand gets to a certain level, hearing you say, we just don't have and even to break that down a little bit for, resources are being allocated to large scale events, right? So when it's almost like you cannot expect it to kind of help strip it back. You cannot expect somebody to shut down their entire restaurant for a party of 5. Like, that restaurant has to sustain. That restaurant has to be able to fill all the tables in order to pay its bills. So I think that going back to what we said earlier about taking yourself out of your feeling about it and understanding where that person is coming from, and like, oh, I get it. You guys have a restaurant that seats 200 people. I get why you don't want to shut it down for 5 people.
But you don't want to make the person feel little. And I think the reason for many times, the reasons we have taken on really small clients or smaller events is because you have this idea of like, well, you never know where this is going to go. This event is going to grow if it's successful, and you never want to turn it down. So I think the key is how you turn someone down and how you make them feel. You can make them feel this big, you can make them feel unimportant, or you can do the opposite and say, I really believe in you. I believe in what you're doing, and I want to make sure that you're working with an event production company that's going to give you the attention you deserve. And so Perhaps it's a referral. Hey, I think you're going to be in the good hands of this person.
Going back to relationships.
And I'm always willing to have a conversation. I think you should always be willing to talk with someone. You know, at Display Group, if we're going to decide that we can't produce your event, we're always going to talk to you. And I would always talk to anybody and give them some of my time to consult with them and really hear them out and make them feel good, because they'll remember that when their event grows or when they go to another position, and they'll come back. So you don't have to worry about ruining a relationship. You may actually be saving the relationship by declining the work.
Yeah. And that, to your point, how you make people feel, that's such a huge thing in brand and marketing. It's like people may forget what the subject was, but the context they will never forget. Like how they felt about, you know, it's like when you walk into a Starbucks, and maybe I shouldn't use Starbucks, but I'll use a local coffee shop.
They're trying to go back to their roots, and it's working a little bit.
Yeah.
I had a glass for my refresher the other day, and I loved it. It was good. So
but there's so many local coffee shops that are just killing it right now that I think when you go into any place, any establishment, and you feel good when you leave it, even if the coffee just wasn't like doing it that day, you still felt good, and the feeling that you had, you'll give them another chance. But it is important that the experience is full scope. Like the product has to be great, the experience has to be great, the ambiance has to be great. It's all like, it's a total package.
And if you're not going to be able to deliver that to your client, let them, tell them that. And so my approach is, whenever I get asked to maybe go outside the scope of our work, I'm very honest with our client. This is not what we do every day, but I do think I can do it. I think I can help you, but let's do that under the understanding that I may fail. It may not be exactly what you want, because this isn't what I do every day. So now it's your decision. And there's a refreshing honesty to that builds trust for the future.
And transparency.
Yeah, exactly. And I do that with subcontractors, suppliers, and partners. And I think that's for people listening that are starting their businesses. You may need to rely on subcontractors, suppliers, partner companies when you're outside your scope. And so I've learned, and there's different approaches to this, but for me, I am radically transparent about my suppliers and my partners. And I always tell my clients, in fact, in my initial conversations with most clients, I tell them, we do a lot within our four walls, but we don't do everything here. So I'm always going to tell you where things are being done, who's working on them, and whether it's us or someone else. I'm going to tell you. You're never going to walk in and say, hey, I want to see my display. And I'll be like, oh, it's not here. I'm never going to do that. I don't want to have that. So, and then what I do is because I'm being so transparent, I'm really staking my reputation on this supplier or partner or, subcontractor. So I'm not going to just give that away to anybody. If I don't,
when you say give that away, what do you mean by that?
I'm not going to let them hold my reputation in their hand if they haven't earned that. So I think that's important to think about when you have a client. Like you said, you're like I said earlier, you're treating them so special. You don't want to blow it. You don't want to ruin it. So if they're asking you to do work for them and you then have to lean on a partner or some other agency, you're handing them your client, so to speak. You're handing them your reputation. So don't be quick to do that. So when I'm working with clients, the one way I build trust with them is I say, I am bringing in a partner on this, but it's someone I've been working with for 10 years or 5 years. It's someone I've built experiences with in the past, and I trust them, and that's who I'm using. I'm not just Googling somebody and calling them up and asking them and then handing them this. Yeah. I'd rather just say I can't handle it at that point.
I think how you said being very transparent about what we do is so important, because even when a client is, because I'm sure you see this all the time. Clients are like, what about this? Or what if we did this? Or what if this? Like the ideas come to the table, and it's like being transparent about, well, we normally don't, that's not, even if you have to say like, that's not included in the initial, project breakdown, we can we can figure out a way to make it happen. Or how about we approach it from the lens of, maybe this is something that we can move to the next phase of the project or the next time we do it, because I think that going back to over promising and over deliver with the hope and expectation that just by being a yes person, you're going to, give this person's going to stay with you forever. If you say yes to too many times or to the wrong thing, they may leave. Absolutely. So I think that when you're able to say how you had stated, this is not what we normally do, so it sets that clear line, like, oh, okay, so I understand that this is not what they normally do.
We're experimenting now.
Yeah. I understand this is not what they normally do, but I want this to happen. So in their mind, they're starting to understand, like, okay, so this is not part of the initial scope of work. Okay, recalibrating, it's going to cost more money. Maybe I don't want to do this right now because that's not included in, okay, maybe we won't do that. So you kind of have to have that like back and forth conversation with the client, so that way they start to understand what is included and what is not.
Yeah. And one thing I'm always telling our team, there's no secret we're trying to make money. Like, I feel like sometimes people hesitate. Like it's almost like dirty or inappropriate that they're trying to make money on this deal. So there's nothing wrong with, just being right out there. Like, if I do this, I'm going to lose money, or it's costing me X. I have to charge you X. There's no secret in that. Like, let's have these open conversations, because we're not committing a crime trying to make money. And that's the only way we can sustain what we're doing anyway.
And sometimes it's the perception. I think that when people don't fully understand, because even like, I feel like today with technology, a lot of people, for some reason in their mind, see technology as like, oh, it's not hard. It's easy. Like, you're not actually lifting up. It's just technology, but technology, there's technology in your car. Doesn't mean that you can buy a car and never get an oil change or get new tires or get, like, it's maintenance, things depreciate, things break apart, like systems sometimes, need updating because your business structure is changing, and that's not like, that is not, I think there's a difference between product and service. And I think that when a lot of times people want to, and I understand this, a lot of people want, all right, how much does it cost? So that way we can set our budget.
Sure.
Makes sense. I get it. But it's just as important to understand that when you set a budget and you have that conversation with the service provider, that you know what you're getting and you're comfortable with what you're getting for what you're paying for. If you want anything more, and even time is more. If you want more time with a team, or if you want more time with an expert, you have to understand that that is more.
Yeah. In fact, that reminds me of something I've been really thinking a lot about lately. And it's when whether a client's coming to you or you're going to somebody, you need to have one of two things fully defined, in my opinion. One is you need to have your budget firmly fixed, or you need to know exactly what you want, the scope of your work. So you need to have one of those two things. You can go to someone and say, I know exactly what I want. I have no idea what it's going to cost, but this is what I want. You tell me what it costs. Or the flip side is, I don't really know what I want, but I know I have this much money. You tell me what I can get for that money. If you don't have either of those things, it's such a difficult conversation, and I would end up in I'd end up with these requests that would rot in the bottom of my inbox because I didn't know what to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized that the common denominator with all those requests are they didn't have a scope or a budget.
Niko, it is one of the most, I think, in business, especially in creative, the business world of creative,
Mm-hmm.
it is one of the most interesting conversations to start, because I think for a consumer purchasing a creative product or service, they think it already has a price tag.
Mm-hmm.
No, if it's like almost saying to a developer, I want you to buy me a house, or I want you to build me a house. How much? How many floors do you want? Do you want 2 kitchens? Do you want 3-car garage? Like you have to know, how you said, you have to know what you want.
Great way to illustrate what I was just talking. The house is a good way to illustrate that.
It's so huge. I think for anybody wondering or wanting to work with somebody or an industry or a brand in creative, your 2 points about either you have a budget or you know what you want is the way that you start the relationship.
You have to, it'll be very painful for you. And we get approached by, some perhaps agencies that are inexperienced, and they come to us with an idea, but neither a scope or budget. And it's going to be painful for them and painful for us. So yeah, you got to put that work in. And if you don't have those things, that's okay too, but you may need to pay someone something to get you started. If you really want someone to, at that point, you need a consultant, someone that's going to really help you, because you're just not there yet.
Which is a service.
It is. Yeah. So
you
got to be ready.
Different service.
You got to be ready now to at least allocate some budget for consulting, because you need help. And that's okay too, but you need to identify that you need it.
And it's important for people to hear that when you consult with somebody, it's basically like them coming to the table and saying, if this was my business, this is what I would do.
Right.
It's not saying, okay, now do it. No. Doing it, execution is a completely different thing.
Right.
Than the consultation.
Exactly.
So it's understanding the two is so important. But tapping back into the topic of technology. So, technology and customer expectations are changing non-stop today, especially with social media and just fast-paced consumer behavior. I think it's one of those things that, specifically in the world of brand activations, how do you see technology, like the evolution and the fast-changing technology, impacting brand activations and live experiences for brands?
So I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't understand the technologies that will make this possible, but I could tell you what I want. I want to see everything slow down just a little bit, right? I don't want to go back to nothing's going to take us back to pre-iPhone days or pace, but can the pendulum swing a little bit back towards a healthier pace of how we interact with people and we interact with brands and we have experiences? So I hope technology helps us to slow down a little bit. We sort of find a balance of what's healthy, because I think we all know we don't feel good when we're addicted to our phones. We're scrolling endlessly. We have no attention span. We don't feel good. We know it's wrong. We know it's not healthy. We don't exactly know how to change it or fix it. But I hope that over the next 10 to 15 years, whatever, we're responsible enough to focus on how can we slow these experiences down. I'd love technology to develop a way where we can put our phones away, because we all want to capture the moment on our phones so that we can look back on it. My phone's filled with the last almost 20 years of my life, and seeing it and reliving it. So I see the value in that. And when you're in an experience, you want to capture it. I'm hoping that some way these experiences can be captured for us and delivered to us almost instantly. Because I think that's the reason we want to record, because we may want to go show our friend in 2 minutes, or send it to a loved one, you know, hey, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing. Hopefully, maybe there would be technology where, you know, these things are delivered to us, whether, you know, they're recorded for us in our behalf with us in them.
That's an interesting perspective, you know, mindset, because I think when the whole thing about holding up your phone at events, it's kind of like perspective, vantage point. You know, it's like, and it's also too, like, for some people, it's my curated presentation of this experience, you know? But I think that, you know, I mean, we have certain technologies like the glasses that are coming out with cameras inside of them, and, you know, people are going to be able to, like, be more present in the moment and then get a sense of, like, I understand how Jennifer likes to take pictures and what things she's interested in. So it may not even require her to manually have any sort of, like, trigger. It may just do it in real time. And then at the end of the day, just give her a story summary of the event. I think that that's huge.
That's what I'd love. You know, I know next week I'm taking my young family to Disney, and my wife said, well, we might do this package where you get all these pictures at the end. There's photographers all over, and, you know, it ties into your wristband, and you just get delivered photos of you and your family at the end of the day. And I'm like, yes, let's do that. You know, I'd love to be able to keep my phone in my pocket longer and pull it out less and still have these memories captured. So those sorts of innovations would be nice. And I'd love, you know, for brand experiences to be a little less about going viral or, you know, tracking engagement only by likes and shares and comments.
How do you guys explore those, like, options of, if somebody is saying, display group, I would like to have that type of experience. Like, let's say, you know, 5 years from now, when it starts to become like an option, more and more an option, and there's service providers or contractors available, how do you guys explore that option? Like, are you actively seeking different technology for live events, or are you actively seeking service providers that are providing unique experiences?
Yeah, I think it's, for us, we know what we do well, but there's so many other layers to event marketing and experience marketing. So we attend a lot of really nice trade conferences and shows to listen and learn to what others are doing. And, you know, it never fails that the next week you're in a conversation with a client, and you can tie it back to a new technology that you saw at a show or an event. So it is important to continue learning and growing. I think it's so important. I try to tell others on our team, you know, to get out there, go to events, go to industry shows, and see what others are doing and learn. I always tell the team to, like, watch the Grammys, watch the Oscars, you know.
I watch, you know, like, for anybody watching that doesn't know, if you own an agency and it's a creative agency, you can literally write off your things like Netflix subscriptions and movie tickets, because when you're going and experience these things, you're doing market research.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? You got to know what's out there. And so, yeah, we're trying to always learn. And going back to, like, I hope we can figure out, maybe, you know, AI will help us to track engagement differently, you know, in the future. Because, you know, I recently did work with a rather high profile client who was producing an experiential activation. And what I really appreciated is they were like, we just want people to engage, and we're not even that concerned about capturing data. Because I'm like, okay, at what point are we going to get email addresses and names? And they're like, no, we don't. That's not really our objective. Our objective is just to connect with people and educate them. We're not trying to capture data.
That's such an interesting point. Can I just say real quick? Because I think that a lot of times people overthink when are we going to get what we want? And it's like, people will find you. If you're good at what you do and you provide that positive experience, because it's like, if people go to these experiences, and I would assume this person is a high profile person that people can literally Google and be like, I like this thing that they just did at this venue, and I want to find some more information about it. People can find what they want now. And then if you have on your website or a landing page, an opportunity for them to submit for more information, then do it like that.
Yeah.
I think when you, what was the term that you had mentioned? Your ego. When you lead with ego, people subconsciously know it and feel it. Like if we were out here saying, become a sponsor, become a guest, like people are just going to feel like, I don't know, weird about it. But it's like, if we don't put it out there and we just focus on like bringing value to the audience, then they're going to start doing their due diligence and start doing their research and because we have it available on the website for people to go and submit to become a guest, but we don't promote it, because we want people to feel like, that's dope. Like, I like what you're doing. I want to be a part of it. I want to be affiliated, like how we were talking off camera. When people graduate from school and they feel this sense of pride and excitement because they're about to work for PepsiCo or Johnson & Johnson, these brands that people recognize and respect, or how I was talking about, that one candidate that was like, interning for a role for a local sports team. And they were saying out loud that they would work for free because it was their dream to always to work for that team, So I think that when you just focus on how you were saying your client, you just focus on the experience, that's everything.
Yeah, it is, because I went and actually to another event, I engaged with an experience that was very similar to the one my client just produced. And I had to take like a 10-question quiz. I had to give my address, my birthday, my phone number. I mean, if I wasn't doing it for research, I would have been out. And I asked the brand ambassador, I said, how many people abandon this experience before they even get started? So, and it just, again, that kind of icky feeling you get when you're just being a pawn in something. You don't like that. And so, yeah, I hope that experiences continue to get away from this quick hit, these quick measurables. Yeah, maybe you won't, it's an uneasy feeling to not have the data to know your ROI on an experience and just kind of put it out there and trust that you're getting your brand out there. But hopefully, with the use of technology, we'll be able to track engagement other than just emails and phone numbers and data like that. We'll be able to know how successful our campaign was with some other measurables.
I see it like turning into you being able to walk into a space, and the space based on whether it's a phone or a chip or glasses or watch, whatever that we have on our person, the data is going to be able to start to track. And that's the other reason why I think that for people that get so offended by like, I don't want to be tracked. If it could make things so much more convenient for you, why would you not want, like, if you could walk up to your house and it unlocks for you before you even like get to the last step, you're going to be like, no,
right,
like you want that. You want that convenience. So if you guys are not, because I would assume that you're not putting all of those like questionnaires into your activations, probably for some, but you're focused on the experience. So how do you measure success in those live experiences if you're not, like, what is the data?
Yeah. I'll be honest, this is a newer, business line for us, these sort of interactive digital experiences. I'll tell you how I measured it was walking into the space and actually seeing people interact and experience it, see their smiles on their faces, and just see the traffic. I mean, you can literally see it in front of you if your activation is just busy with a lot of people and they're enjoying themselves. So really just trusting your eyes is huge. But yeah, there are other ways just to track.
What are just a couple of those ways? Like, is it like hashtags that are used by like?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, some QR codes. It's funny, when QR codes first came out, I thought they were gonna like die off really quickly. Yeah. I kind of feel like they did, and then I think when your camera on your phone became your QR code reader, it kind of came back. But QR codes are great. You can track how many times those are scanned. If you have a digital experience, just how many times did it start?
Also,
how many times did it finish? Those are ways
also
to track.
On the QR code for anybody that doesn't know this, if you, instead of asking for a name, email, phone number, address, social security number, all the information, like if you have them scan a QR code and you have a tracking pixel on there, you at least have that data where you can retarget back to them in the future, you know? Or you can, you know, most softwares now, most CRMs now allow you to at least track how many times somebody's seen a page, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like you can start to see, oh, wow, there was over 500 scans of this code. And then they went to the next page or they actually submitted their information. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like there's so many different ways of accomplishing what you want to accomplish without feeling how you said, like, what are they trying to, you know?
Yeah. And that's where you need to identify really what is, I think it's so important to understand what is your objective to your activation. If the objective to your activation is leads, you know, I want names and phone numbers. How can you do that in a way that feels more natural? Doesn't feel like you're, you know, creating a hostage situation where unless you give up all this information, we can't let you enjoy this experience. What are ways that feel natural? And, you know, can you build an experience that at the end people just want to give you their information because they want to learn more and they fell in love with something you did and you created a connection with them? That's better. But identifying what you want, and, you know, in the case of my previous client, you know, for them, they didn't want leads. That wasn't their main objective. They wanted exposure to a new product, and that wasn't their key objective. So they were okay to let go of sort of that data capture component and make it so much better of an experience for anybody enjoying it.
So what do you practice, or how, like, do you have rituals, or do you have like a board, a vision board? Like, how do you constantly stay like on top of evolving with what's happening? Like, you know, and this is not just in like the event experience space, but this is also like talent. Like there's a roster of talent that I'm like interested in, or like, how do you stay on top of that evolution?
It's tough, man. I think for me, we all know you can consume so much information and be addicted to the endless flow of content that's coming at you. So for me, my rituals or daily habits are all about making sure that I'm staying focused on like my core values, some of the things we've talked about: transparency, honesty, personal interest, humility. And for me to be able to hone those qualities and stay focused on them, I really have to try to strip out a lot of the distractions. So I love social media. Like I love Instagram, love it, but I have to take really measured breaks from it to just regain consciousness. You know, kind of stripping down the noise and the distractions can leave you in a space where you can be alert to forming new relationships and alert to new opportunities. Your brain is free to think of new ideas. So I'm not endlessly scrolling LinkedIn or the internet or the news to try to stay on top of everything, but I am trying to just create a space for myself every day where I'm focusing on honing in those qualities that I know are important to my business and to my relationships in life. One thing I've been doing to really help me just be, I'm really been focused on just being in the moment. And I know we talk about that all the time, and people say about being present and all that. We desire that. So I've become kind of obsessed with sounds because, you know, there's sound designers in movies that they're doing the footsteps and the crinkling the paper and you know, they're creating all the sounds, and it really makes the movie so enriching and so rich when you hear those sounds. So I've been trying to just hear them in my daily life, and it helps me to be present in the moment I'm in, because when you're paying attention to the sounds everything is making, you can't help but just be in that moment. Because I think we all know how, you know, we can be doing something and our brain is somewhere else, and we're just going through we're like a robot just going through a ritual, and you don't get any joy out of that. So I've been trying to be in those moments by listening to the sounds. I know it sounds very philosophical, but like it's really helped me just listen to the sounds and be in those moments. And one of my daily rituals right now is just, and it's been for years, is taking my two oldest daughters to school every morning. You know, if you're in a position where you can take your kids to school. I mean, that is a gift. It is a gift. And it's so easy to treat it like a chore. I gotta make lunch. I gotta, fill their waters. I gotta do all these things. I gotta do these things. And your mind's at work. I got all these things I gotta do for work. So you're already thinking about work. Now taking your kids to school is a chore. You're angry and frustrated. You got a short fuse. You're not in the moment with them. It's just all negative. So I've been trying to just be in the moment and say, okay, I'm going to take my kids to school this morning and I'm going to enjoy this time. I'm going to make it a positive experience for them that they can always look back on growing up. And then I'm going to get to work. And when I get to work, I'm in a much better space to focus on that and what needs to be done there.
100%. It's perspective. Mm-hmm. I think that your mind is the driving ship. Mm-hmm. You decide, and I think to your point, when you are so consumed by missing something, it's easy to forget that when you go in to find what you're looking for instead of going out, that's when you find the best stuff. Yep. It's literally, you have to give yourself that time to connect to yourself in order for you to effectively connect with others.
Well said.
Well, thank you so much, Niko, for being here. I appreciate your time, your talent, your creativity. Thank you.
Thank you.